On January 29, 2025, in bright New York City skies, he stepped onto American soil under handcuffs. Victims had watched their bank accounts vanish in silent panic, money wired away in seconds. He had built over 1,000 fake companies. He tricked staff with fake emails into wiring millions. He watched funds move overseas to China bank accounts. It was clean, fast, and invisible, until it wasn't. Now, he stood facing justice. All he had left was the cold truth of what became of his empire. This is a real story. To follow every shocking twist, subscribe now to @MysteryPlaybacksSeries and stay until the end. Eric Jason Victoria-Brito, age 30, lived in Hollywood, Florida. He seemed normal. But inside, he was building something dark. Public documents show he registered more than 1,000 shell companies. New York Post. Between December 2017 and November 2022, he and 5 co-conspirators launched business email compromise schemes. They created domains that looked real. They sent fake invoices. Victims believed the emails and sent money. They targeted a major U.S. sports organization, a public healthcare company, non-profits, law firms, construction firms, investment funds, and city governments. New York Post. They stole roughly $60 million in real loss. They tried to steal over $150 million. To avoid detection, they wired funds overseas, often to banks in China. New York Post. As stolen funds moved overseas rapidly, victims had no time to recover. Money flowed through shell firms, money mules, and foreign banks. Investigators later described the scheme as insidious. By early 2022, investigators had connected dots across several states. In Maryland, a city government had lost $2.8 million. In Texas, a real estate firm wired nearly $900,000 to a fake escrow account. In California, a non-profit was tricked by an email that looked like it came from its own CFO. The staff didn't realize anything was wrong until their vendors called, demanding payment. That's when the U.S. Secret Service stepped in. Agents noticed something strange. The bank accounts receiving the stolen money were linked to companies no one had heard of. Some had names similar to real businesses, but just different enough to seem real. One was called Nabella LLC. Another, Elite Pro International. They traced them all back to South Florida. Inside a quiet post office in Hollywood, Florida, a man came in almost every week. He picked up mail, boxes, documents. That man was Eric Jason Victoria-Brito. He had used stolen identities to register fake companies with the state. Some had real tax ID numbers. Some even applied for Paycheck Protection Program loans during COVID. Each company had its own bank account. Each had its own mailing address, P.O. boxes scattered across the city. Investigators believed Victoria-Brito used these to receive stolen money before wiring it overseas. The evidence was building. But law enforcement still had one problem. Victoria-Brito had disappeared. By late 2022, Victoria-Brito left the US. He flew to the Dominican Republic. He had citizenship there. He had contacts. And he believed the US couldn't touch him. He was wrong. Agents contacted Interpol. A red notice was issued, alerting international police that Victoria-Brito was a fugitive wanted in a multi-million-dollar US bank fraud investigation. Still, months passed. He was quiet. The case stayed open. Then, in late 2024, Dominican authorities received a tip. Victoria-Brito was spotted at a luxury condo in Santo Domingo. They moved in. He didn't resist. He didn't run. He just said one thing. I didn't know I was wanted. It took over 60 days to complete extradition paperwork. On January 29, 2025, Victoria-Brito landed in New York. He wore a simple hoodie and jeans. No jewelry. No emotion. U.S. Marshals walked him through Federal Plaza. Cameras caught just one blurred shot before he was rushed inside. He was charged with conspiracy to commit bank fraud, up to 30 years. Conspiracy to launder money, up to 20 years. He said nothing in court, just nodded. But prosecutors spoke loud and clear. This was not just one man. It was a coordinated network designed to steal from American institutions, then hide behind foreign accounts. Victoria-Brito did not act alone. According to court files, one partner worked as the email builder, creating fake email domains like ceocorp.com to impersonate real businesses. Another helped collect fake IDs. He even impersonated real victims at banks, using wigs and fake passports to withdraw money. One woman managed the wire transfers. She'd call banks pretending to be the payee, demanding same-day processing. Each played a role. Each kept silent. But the money trail told the truth. And just as the puzzle began to form, another twist dropped. One of the victim organizations, an American city, was found to have lost funds critical for emergency services. People didn't just lose money. Some lost trust. Some lost jobs. That's when the public realized this wasn't just theft. It was war by email. This is a real story. Every fact you hear is public. You can check it yourself. If real-life mysteries leave you breathless, subscribe now to MysteryPlaybacksSeries. Because the truth that truly haunts might be closer than you think. The case raised more questions than answers. How many people were really involved? More than the 5 named in court files? Were some of the stolen funds used to support other criminal networks? Some wire transfers went to China. Others to Dubai. Why did so many organizations fall for it? Most had no two-step verification. Some hadn't trained staff on email fraud. Others were simply caught at the wrong time. The FBI later said, business email compromise isn't just a scam. It's a digital pandemic. The scariest part? There are hundreds of other Victoria-Britos still out there. This is not fiction. Every detail is part of a real case that you can verify yourself. These companies existed. These victims suffered. And Eric Jason Victoria-Brito now faces federal prison time. At the end of the court hearing, reporters asked if Victoria-Brito had any final words. He didn't look up. But the officer beside him said softly, he said he was just trying to build a better life. That better life came at a terrible cost. And somewhere across oceans and borders, millions in stolen funds still sit in accounts never traced. Have you come across this story before? What would you have done if you got that email? If these kind of stories intrigue you, subscribe now to MysteryPlaybacksSeries. Because every week, we expose the lies in every mystery with the truth. The room was cold. Federal court in Manhattan held the kind of silence that makes the air feel heavier. Eric Jason Victoria-Brito sat at the defense table. His hands were cuffed. His eyes stayed low. Across from him sat a U.S. attorney. A sharp suit. A thick file. He turned to the judge. Your Honor, this man didn't just steal money. He used fake emails to rob cities of their safety nets, non-profits of their missions, and hospitals of their resources. The judge nodded slowly. The bailiff stood still. The courtroom wasn't full. But the energy inside? Heavy. Dark. Everyone knew this case wasn't just about money. It was about trust. And how easy it was to break it. When agents raided a storage unit in Florida linked to Victoria-Brito, they found more than fake IDs. There were dozens of laptops, hard drives, prepaid phones, stacks of documents, some with fake company names, some with real people's addresses. One file stood out. It was labeled Clean Leads. Inside were hundreds of names, email addresses, business info, and something called target level written beside each one. Level 1, easy to fool. Level 2, needs real invoice. Level 3, high value, use confirmed spoof. It was a playbook. And it had worked. Houston, Texas. A mid-sized real estate company got an email from First Trust Closings. The subject line read, Final Settlement Instructions. The assistant wired $720,000 within the hour. She was fired that same week. She never got over it. Springfield, Missouri. A small charity lost $410,000 meant to fund housing for disabled veterans. They had to shut down 2 homes. Volunteers cried when they packed up. Baltimore, Maryland. A local city agency wired $1.2 million to what they thought was their state contractor. They didn't realize the mistake until the actual contractor called days later. The mayor held a press conference. His voice cracked. We trusted our systems. We didn't know we were being watched. Fake domain created. They would register a domain like at citybuilders.com instead of at citybuilders.com. Employee impersonation. A fake email would say, Hi Cindy, please process today's wire. CFO already signed off. Urgency language. Phrases like, Client waiting for confirmation. Funds must settle before noon. CEO approval already granted. Bank details attached. Always new. Always hard to trace. Usually routed to an LLC in Florida or Georgia. Once sent, funds gone. They'd be wired out of the US within 30 minutes. Mostly to Hong Kong or Shanghai. Many of the employees blamed themselves. They weren't criminals. They were secretaries, finance assistants, project leads, people trying to do their job. And now, their mistakes cost millions. One woman wrote in her victim statement, I haven't slept since it happened. I see the email in my dreams. Another man said, I walk into work like a ghost. I know people talk about me. These were scars no money could heal. FBI digital forensics teams tracked over 150 domains linked to the fraud. Many were hosted in offshore servers. One was hosted in Iceland. Another in Russia. But they all had a common feature. They were paid for using cryptocurrency. Investigators said this made it harder to prove the direct link. But one mistake unraveled it all. In August 2022, one of the fake domains was purchased using an email that led back to Victoria-Brito's real identity. And that's when the hunt truly began. It wasn't just the victims who suffered. Vendors didn't get paid on time. Projects were delayed. Communities lost services. And people started asking dangerous questions. Why did our city not catch this? Why wasn't there more protection? Who's really responsible? The fraud had caused a confidence collapse. Mayors were questioned. Boards were fired. And some organizations never recovered. This is not fiction. Every detail is part of a real case that you can verify yourself. This isn't about a clever hacker. It's about real pain. Real systems that were exposed. And a scheme that lasted years before justice caught up. During questioning, an agent asked Victoria-Brito, "Why do you do it?" He paused. He looked down. And then he said, "I just wanted to make money. I didn't think it would get this far." But it had. Lives were torn apart. Money was still missing. And now, one of the biggest business email fraud networks had finally come crashing down. As Victoria-Brito sits in a federal detention center awaiting trial. There are still 5 open warrants for others involved. Interpol is still chasing the money. And no one knows how much was truly stolen. Or where it all went. It was quiet again in the courtroom. Judge Paul Engelmeyer looked down at his papers, then over his glasses at Eric Jason Victoria-Brito. He spoke clearly. "You stole more than money. You broke the system that people trusted to feed their children, protect their health, and run their cities. Victoria-Brito didn't blink. The courtroom waited. This court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison. There were gasps. Some thought it would be longer. But others whispered, that's only the beginning. The FBI had names. Lots of them. At least 6 co-conspirators. Some lived in Georgia. 1 in Panama. 2 others were traced to Hong Kong. 1 was in Spain. All had one thing in common. Disappeared. The file said things like, last seen January 2023, Miami. Fled during investigation. Interpol red notice issued. The fraud ring wasn't just one man. It was an operation. And it wasn't over. They found some money in Florida bank accounts. A little more in cryptocurrency wallets tied to VPN servers. But the rest? Gone. Over $7 million is still missing. Investigators believe it was broken into hundreds of smaller wires, then funneled through shell companies, offshore banks, crypto exchanges without ID rules. The money trail went cold in places like Cyprus, Singapore, and even Nigeria. It was a ghost trail. And they may never find it. After the case, government offices across the US held emergency meetings. Cities changed their payment protocols. Hospitals reviewed vendor security. Non-profits added multi-step verification for all wire transfers. Some states passed laws requiring verified bank routing checks. Approval by 2 humans, not just systems. New email monitoring for spoofing. What Victoria-Brito and his crew exposed wasn't just human error. They exposed the fragility of modern trust. CNN ran the headline. Inside the $10 million email scam that broke American safety nets. The New York Times printed a front-page story. He pretended to be a vendor. He took millions. And local papers told the smaller stories. Charity folds after devastating wire fraud. City funds lost to email scam, recovery in progress. Employee speaks out after accidental transfer, I thought it was real. It wasn't just a scandal. It became a case study. Cara Reynolds, 32 years old. Worked for a non-profit in Kansas City. She was the one who clicked send. She believed the email was from their longtime supplier. She cried during her testimony. I read it 3 times. It felt real. I just wanted to do my job. The non-profit lost $380,000. They had to lay off 12 people. Cara left the job. Months later, she sent a letter to the court. Just 6 words. Tell him I still cry daily. What made this scam different? It wasn't done with guns or violence. It was done with words, with email addresses. It preyed on trust, routine, pressure. People didn't expect to be watched, didn't expect to be tricked. But Victoria-Brito knew. If it sounds real and looks real, most people won't question it. And he was right. After the case, Interpol released a cyber alert to over 60 countries. Business email compromise is a top-level threat. New task forces were formed. In France. In South Korea. Even in Rwanda. Because this wasn't just an American problem. It was a global epidemic. And it could hit anyone. From a small school in Ghana. To a shipping company in Denmark. To a city office in Alabama. If you run a business. If you work in finance. If you click send on bank wires. Stop. Verify every email. Double-check account numbers. Call the person if you're unsure. Because one mistake can haunt you forever. And in today's world? The next Eric Jason might already be watching. In prison, Victoria-Brito still doesn't show much emotion. Inmates say he keeps to himself. He reads books on cryptocurrency. He's already filed 2 appeals. One officer said, "He talks like he's gonna walk out and start over." And maybe he will. Because here's the scariest part. This wasn't even his first scam. In 2014, he was caught in a check fraud case in New Jersey. He got probation. No jail. And then? He vanished into the digital shadows. Until now. This is not fiction. This is real. It happened in your country. In your systems. To real people who now carry the scars. So protect your inbox. Protect your people. And always, always ask the hard questions before you click send. Subscribe now to @MysteryPlaybacksSeries. More stories like this are still unfolding. Watch the upcoming video on your screen, or slide into our playlist of real mysteries and crimes. The next